Okay, I think we're live. This is my first time live streaming like this. So bear with me because I'm going to try to do like super chat questions and stuff, but I'm not exactly sure how to do it. Oh shit, I see all you guys already on the side. Wow, you got here fast. What the fuck? So I want to answer some super chat questions. I don't know exactly how to do the super chat thing. Like I guess you'll do the super chat questions, they pop up, I answer them, but I don't know if I'm afraid of missing one. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if there's a specific section where it all pops up. But if there is, I'd like to find it, and preferably I don't want to see my own face because that gets kind of weird. But holy shit, the chat's already out of control. So as I talk to you guys, I'm going to see if I could find the super chats. That's not the way to go. All right, whatever. I can't find it. If somehow I manage to, already 413 people watching. Holy shit, that's crazy. Oh, this is so bizarre and kind of cool at the same time. If I somehow stumble across the super chat questions, I will answer them. If I can't find them, well, that just sucks for everybody, and you're gonna have to listen to me run my mouth without answering your questions. I like how it looks like you guys are about to blow me. That's what it looks like. I'm looking at my picture on the screen talking, and it looks like your head is by my crotch, and you're about to blow me, all 436 of you. Okay, so a few things I wanted to talk about. Oh, live control room. Maybe that's how I could see the super chat questions. Let's see. No, just live chat. Okay. Well, what, to take out your dick? Oh. For the right price, this dick will be all up on your screen. Oh, there you go. Courtney Haynes. Do you see this? I do see it. Thank you, Courtney. Courtney just sent me $2. Appreciate that. So I guess I do, but I'm afraid of so Courtney, that just went right past and I saw it. But if I'm not looking at the chat every second, I'm going to miss it. Am I missing something about super chats that other people know that I don't know because I'm an idiot? Well, whatever. I like all the dick emojis that are being. Kyle, can you do super chat questions? Yes, I'm trying. Alex Khan asks, Kyle, can you do super chat? That's what I'm trying to do. But I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So that's why I'm just I seem lost to you people. Is your dick cute, Kyle? I'm not complaining. I mean, dicks in general aren't cute. Okay, here we go. So there's a super chat. Oh, yeah, okay. I guess it just pops up right here. Hey, Kyle, you're my favorite lesbian. Thank you, Bailey. When will you do a live stream with Sargon of Akkad again? My favorite anime crossover. I don't know what anime, what that last part means, but Sargon and I have probably done 4 or 5 hangouts where we talked about a lot of stuff. So you can go check those out. There's been a lot of them. Some on his channel, some on my channel. You know, for the longest time, I would have said Sargon really got a bad rap from people because a lot of people kind of tarred him as being alt-right. And I always kind of defended him and said, no, when you talk to him, he says he's for universal health care, he's for a living wage, he's for ending the wars and stuff. But I do think, I mean, you ask him, but I do think that in recent times he has shifted more right-wing. Like, I think he's done a lot of defending of President Trump, which I find pretty much unconscionable. And I don't know how a guy as smart as him can do that. But again, you ask him and see where he describes himself politically. But in my mind, he seemingly has shifted to the right, you know, in the past few months or whatever. But he's still a nice guy. We've been friendly with each other all throughout. Okay, let's see. I got some more super chat questions here. I want to talk about some other stuff too, and I'll get to that. But I will do your super chat questions as much as possible. Kyle, have you ever been approached by fans in real life? If so, how do you feel about it? Yes, I have. It's a little weird at first, but then it's cool. I guess you just have to like digest the fact that there are going to be people who talk to you who they basically know you already, and they're like your friend already, but you don't know them. So it's a little bit of a weird dynamic early on, but as soon as you digest the fact that these people are basically like your friends and you just don't know them yet, then it's, you know, it's a much easier thing to digest. And by the way, thanks everybody for doing the super chat stuff. I really appreciate that. De Neurosis Unum asked the last one. Oh shit, I just missed one of the super chats, guys. I'm sorry. Somebody, ROFL Gator just sent $10. Thank you. Okay, so while you guys like let the super chats roll in and stuff, I will talk about some other stuff that I wanted to get to today. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the Republicans having to lie to pass their tax bill. I saw Paul Ryan did a speech on the House floor where he's like, you know, talking about how it's time to give the people back their money. And there's no way to describe that except a complete and utter lie. I mean, that's what it is. According to the Congressional Budget Office, everybody who makes $75,000 a year or less will see a tax increase within the next decade. So when they say, oh, this is for regular people, this is for working people, that's just a flat out lie. And what annoys me is that the Democrats seem pretty ineffectual in just rejecting that and you know, basically saying, you're wrong and I'm not going to let you get away with that. And I think they should. I think they should make that like a big part of fighting back against this tax bill. Now, it looks like it's going to pass. It already passed the House. It's supposed to be up in the Senate tonight, but apparently it has to go back to the House and they have to re-vote on it because of some obscure provision about how if it adds more than $1.5 trillion to the deficit, which this will, by the way, you have to have a they have to re-vote on it because they had to tweak something, I guess. I don't know. But Bernie's trying to make that stick where apparently you would need 60 votes in the Senate to get it passed, which they don't have, which would be amazing if somehow they got that to stick. But the idea is if you add more than $1.5 trillion to the deficit in a piece of legislation, you need a supermajority to get it through. But it's amazing how every time any Republican sells this, they have to lie. And that really gets under my skin, and it's really frustrating because it's almost like they overwhelm you with bullshit so much, and they say so many things that are not true, that the Democrats let a lot of untrue things just slide. But that would be thing number one, where I'd say, no, I'm not going to let them get away with this and say that this bill is good for regular people when it raises taxes on regular people. Half the country makes $30,000 a year or less. So if you're talking about raising taxes on people that make $75,000 a year or less, you're talking about the overwhelming majority of the American people. And you see that strategy too, the strategy of lying to get shit done. You saw that with Ajit Pai too. He was just another clear example of this, where everything he argued was like, no, I'm the one who's in favor of net neutrality. And, you know, everybody who's against me is not in favor of net neutrality. And of course, that's total bullshit because, as you all know, I don't need to explain it to you guys, but the ISPs, the internet service providers, now can slow down speed to websites that they don't like. And that's fucking crazy. That's crazy. They can basically try to take money. What's the word? Extortion? Is it extort money? Extract money? Whatever the fuck the word is. They can basically try to take money. They demand like a bribe hold them for ransom and say, hey, if you want to be part of this better package, well then, you got to pay us X amount per year. And basically the way Ro Khanna explains it, the way the internet's going to work within the coming years now, because of the destruction of net neutrality, it's going to be more like cable, which is a crazy thought, because, you have to buy different packages for cable. Oh, I want the sports package. Oh, okay. I want HBO. I want Showtime. I want, and think about that for the internet. Like, oh no, I guess I can't afford the package that has Twitter, but I guess I'll get the one that has Facebook. Like, that's what can happen now as a result of this. And so since nobody would be in favor of that, you can't win an argument and win a popularity contest pushing for that idea. Ajit Pai just lies. And he's like, no, I'm in favor of net neutrality, even though I'm the one destroying net neutrality. So it's a really pathetic situation where one of the two political parties has to flat out lie to get everything they want passed. And it's so disingenuous that you can't even, regular people have a hard time debating it. And you see a lot of people duped by the misinformation on Twitter, and the media doesn't do a good job breaking it down. And it just basically, you poison the well, you ruin the debate, because half the debate, they're just being disingenuous liars. And I always like to try to not assume bad intent. Like, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt and, say, hey, if there's another explanation other than lying, like maybe they just don't know. Maybe they're just wrong and, they read something that was convincing even though it wasn't true. But with guys like Paul Ryan and Ajit Pai, they're fucking lying. They're lying and they know they're lying. So that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up. Another thing, let's check in real quick on the super chat. Okay, I don't see any more super chats. Well, do I have to, if I click this thing, manage moderators, participants, pop out chat, toggle timestamps. I just want to make sure that if you guys hit me with super chats, I see them all. I don't want to miss any. I know you identify as a social democrat. How do you feel about politicians who are further to the left, like Jeremy Corbyn or the socialists in Seattle? That's a great question. Keith Martinez asked that question. So I actually like it when there are politicians to the left of me, because you're never going to get everything you want anyway. Like, you're never going to get everything you want if you're Jeremy Corbyn or if you're Kshama Sawant, who you're talking about, Keith, in Seattle. That's a politician in Seattle who's a socialist. Since they're never going to get everything they want, what's good about having people to the left of me elected is that they frame the debate and they argue for a further left-wing position, and then maybe the negotiation position, the compromise position becomes what I prefer. So in other words, if you have a right-winger and then you have the left being people who are like Kshama Sawant or Jeremy Corbyn to the left of me, where they're on probably like post-capitalist, I would say, although I'm not sure they'd have to tell you exactly what they believe, but I know they're to the left of me. But okay, so maybe the compromise position becomes on, I don't know, you pick an issue. Vacation time. You have them, one of them arguing for 2 months off, a paid vacation every year. The conservative position is go fuck yourself, no time off. And then the compromise position becomes a month off. Everybody gets a month off per year. So that's why I think it's good to support people, politicians to the left of you, because they're never going to get everything they want anyway, and they'll fight for those further left positions, and then maybe the compromise position ends up being a social democratic position, which is where I fancy myself. That was a great question, Keith. Mr. Slug King, take my money, you big seltzer sellout. Thank you, Mr. Slug King. By the way, Keith and Mr. Slug King donated $5 there. Thanks, guys. While more of these roll in, I'm going to talk about a few other things that I wanted to bring up. So Jill Stein is being investigated in the, and by the way, for those of you who, I don't know if the lighting on my face is changing or whatever, but I literally have on WWE in the background right now, SmackDown. I don't know how many of you are WWE fans, but for those of you who are curious if you like SmackDown or Raw better, I think I like SmackDown better. I'm old school. I remember the days when it was Mondays and Thursdays. You had Raw on Monday, SmackDown on Thursday. But apparently people were saying that like it was never live on Thursday. They always recorded it on Tuesday and released it on Thursday, which is why now they do Monday and Tuesday. I don't know. I like I'm old-fashioned. I like it the Monday and Thursday split, and I like it. It would be cool if they did Monday live and then Thursday live, but I guess they can't for logistical reasons. That would be my guess, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, that's what's on in the background. So if you see my face changing because of the lighting, it's because there's stuff going on a screen that's right behind me. Where was I? Jill Stein. Okay, so Jill Stein is being investigated in the whole Russia thing that's going on right now. I think it was a Republican who lumped her in as part of this. At least that's what I read. I'm not sure which Republican it was, but there was a Republican who decided, oh, we have to investigate Jill Stein because of Russia. Now, I'm struggling to figure out what even theoretically they're trying to argue about Jill Stein. Like, so what exactly are you saying? Are you saying that she got in the race because Vladimir Putin wanted her to get into the race to be a spoiler to make Donald Trump win? Is that the argument? I genuinely don't know. I'm asking. Because that sounds so utterly ridiculous that it's fucking laughable. Because, first of all, which establishment pundit didn't think that Hillary was going to win in a landslide? That was like the mainstream position was Hillary's going to win in a landslide. I don't even know why we're concerned about this. My guess would be that, you know, a guy like Putin probably thought the same thing. So what's he going to do? Oh, just in case it's close, let me back a third-party candidate? Well, apparently he did a pretty shitty job because Jill Stein got, what, less than 1% of the vote or something like that? So, what are they doing, man? And so they point to this dinner that she had. She was at some event, RT event, and Vladimir Putin was the keynote speaker at this RT event. And Michael Flynn was seated at the table, I think, with Vladimir Putin, and Jill Stein was there too. Now, Jill Stein went on a podcast that The Intercept does, and with Jeremy Scahill, and she explained everything about that day. She's like, okay, so I was at this event for RT. She literally went into so much detail as to explain what she ate at that event. She said Vladimir Putin said absolutely nothing to her. There was a language barrier. They don't fucking speak the same language. So what happened was all he did was he went around the table and shook people's hands. She said the most in-depth conversation she had that night was with somebody who was from the German government or something like that, or somebody who formerly worked for the German government. So what exactly is the claim that's being made here in this Russia investigation? That there's some sort of fucking corrupt dealings going on behind the scene between Jill Stein and Putin, or Putin wanted Jill Stein to throw the election in order to give it to Donald Trump? And it's stunning that there are many people who get mad if you call the current climate McCarthyism. You know, there was this amazing, in fact, I'm going to pull it up now. Glenn Greenwald wrote a great article where he spoke about all the mistakes that the media has been making recently in the Russia thing. And he's basically saying, look, they're not mistakes. They're likely on purpose because all the mistakes are made in the same direction. And it's always to try to make it seem like the Russia thing is like huge. And oh my God, the bombshell's right around the corner. And oh my God, this is the bombshell. Oh my God, collusion has been proven. But then they had to retract a whole bunch of stories because they keep fucking shit up. Okay, cool. I typed Glenn Greenwald, Russia embarrassing media. I think that's okay. Yeah, U.S. media. So the title of the article is "The U.S. Media Suffered Its Most Humiliating Debacle in Ages and Now Refuses All Transparency Over What Happened." And in this article, he describes, so he gets into the WikiLeaks thing, how I think it was CNN who was like, oh my God, we proved collusion between the Trump and the Russians because Donald Trump Jr. got the DNC emails from WikiLeaks before they even released them to the public. So there it is. There's the collusion. Because they say WikiLeaks is a tool of the Russian government. Not true. And they say, oh my God, WikiLeaks colluded with Donald Trump Jr. So therefore, the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. Well, it turns out no. It wasn't WikiLeaks that sent him those emails. It was some random person who they don't even know who it is from some random email. They sent it to Donald Trump Jr., and it was after the WikiLeaks emails had been released. They fucked up the date on the email. They said it was September 4th, and reality was September 14th. So, and the mistakes are always in the same direction. That's the thing that seems like really nefarious about this. But he provides a list in this article of just some of the stories that were like, oh my God, bombshell on the Russia thing that had to be retracted. So Russia hacked into the U.S. electric grid to deprive Americans of heat during winter. By the way, reading that headline alone, you should be like, really? That's what fucking Vladimir Putin's spending his time doing? Let me hack into the U.S. electric grid. What? An anonymous group, prop or not, documented how major U.S. political sites are Kremlin agents. That turned out to be bullshit. WikiLeaks has a long documented relationship with Putin. That was bullshit. These are all the ones that are the ones that were admitted, where they were like, yeah, we fucked all that up. There's a secret server between Trump and a Russian bank that has been discovered. Not true. RT hacked C-SPAN and caused disruption in its broadcast. Not true. Russians hacked into a Ukrainian artillery app. Russians attempted to hack election systems in 21 states. Links have been found between Trump ally Anthony Scaramucci and a Russian investment fund under investigation. So those are just the ones that they had to like retract or fix, and that's just a partial list. And that goes to show you what's happening here with this, you know, this current of hysteria, the current climate that we have. And listen, man, I've spoken about this before. Overall, I support what Mueller's doing, but I support it because it's at the point now where he's just investigating corruption. Like he's investigating Trump's business dealings with other countries. So that I support because Trump, I'm sure he's made corrupt deals with other governments. I mean, he's outsourced to 12 different countries his own jobs, and he's always had fishy relationships. There's credible stories of him with ties to the mafia, including the Russian mafia. So I'm not denying any of that. I'm not denying any of the charges of corruption against Trump. I know how corrupt the motherfucker is. The main claim that I'm against is the idea that Trump is a Putin puppet and he's committed treason. Because I see absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever. And it seems to me like that's where the majority of the focus is put by the media, and that's where the majority of the focus is put by the corporate Democrats. They try to act like, oh, he's a Putin puppet and he committed treason. No, why are you trying? That's a ridiculous charge. It requires a lot of evidence to prove it, and there's no evidence to prove that. Okay, so that I couldn't believe that they're looking into Jill Stein now. And it also, look, man, it looks fucking, it's quite convenient for the Democrats, isn't it? Because now what do? They get to say, oh, look at that. Jill Stein is Putin's puppet, and she's, you know, an agent of a nefarious foreign country. So therefore, all of the criticism from our left, total bullshit, discount it, disregard it. You see what they're doing? It's like they're shifting the Overton window. They're saying, oh, Jill Stein, crazy fucking Green Party lunatic. Oh, you agree with Jill Stein? I mean, why are you such a dumbass who's fallen for propaganda from a hostile foreign power? That's what they're trying to do. And it's just so sad because it shows every minute that's spent focused on Russia and this hysteria, which feels a lot to me like the Democratic Benghazi. That's another minute spent where the Democrats are not pushing for Medicare for all, free college, living wage, New Deal, and they're just not fighting for the right things. So, by the way, I didn't tweet this out, which is a mistake. I should have tweeted this out. I told Lilith I was going to tweet it out. How do I do that? Oh, I could tweet it this way. Man, I feel like I'm in fucking, what's that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio? Where he's inside the dream, which is inside the dream, which is inside the dream. Looking at myself as I'm live. It's really weird. Okay, so I just tweeted that out. Okay, so that's the Jill Stein thing I wanted to talk about. It's really sad that they're just trying to fucking silence all critics by using this Russia thing. And by the way, there's a decent chance, even though I think Mueller can get Trump on corruption stuff, there's some chance that he comes back and clears him. That's the possibility, and I don't think that's a possibility the Democrats have, like, fully digested. Okay, so let me... Why do I have 1,000 links up? Okay, let's go to some of these super chats. $10 one from Matthew Hammond. Could you do a super show dedicated solely to Russiagate, going over the timeline of all the stories so your listeners could send it to our friends, relatives? Yeah, maybe I'll do that, Matthew. Maybe I'll do that. I mean, I've done a bunch of segments on the Russia thing, and I feel like there's a lot of people who... There's a lot of people who straw man you if you discuss it with any nuance. Like I just told you already, like, I think Mueller's thing could ultimately be good if he focuses on Trump's business transactions and his corruption. Like, I like the fact that this guy got Flynn. He got Flynn. He got Flynn. He got Manafort. Like, he has them, and those guys have done corrupt deals. Flynn took $500,000 from the Turkish government and pushed to not arm the Kurds. Because the Kurds were fighting ISIS, we were going to arm them. He pushed to not arm them because Turkey hates the Kurds. So he got him there. He didn't register as a foreign agent. Flynn committed a zillion crimes. Good, I'm happy Flynn got him. I'm happy Flynn got Manafort. Same thing. He did the same thing with Ukraine. So I'm 100% for going after these guys for corruption stuff. And if that's what Mueller's doing and he gets him on that, I'm in favor of it. But what I'm not in favor of is, again, all of the fucking rhetoric about this. Fucking... Hillary Clinton's chief communications director the other day tweeted, Jill Stein is a Russian agent, like 8 times in a row. Like, no, she's not, and that doesn't even make sense. Like, what are you saying? What does that claim even mean, she's a Russian agent? I don't even know what that means. But she's taking fucking calls from Putin and trying to do his bidding? Well, I guess Putin wants fucking Medicare for all then in the U.S. because that's what Jill Stein is for. That's what she's pushing for. Jill Stein doesn't want to arm Al-Qaeda and ISIS anymore. Which is what the Pentagon and the CIA, multiple reports about how we've been accidentally arming them in Syria. She wants to stop arming human rights violators. So if Putin wants that, then that's a good thing. So, but you're not allowed to use nuance on Russiagate. You have to say every claim against Trump in regards to Russia is true, or you're not in the cool club. And hashtag resistance Twitter thinks you're a Putin agent or something. So maybe I will do a breakdown of that. That was Matthew Heyman, by the way, or Hammond. Will you debate JF on DP? JF? JF? I don't know who JF is. And the person who asked that, by the way, was Boozer. $10 from Joan Ignacy, 91. Have you seen that study that showed an unprecedentedly large regional gap of 21 years in life expectancy in the U.S., as low as sub-Saharan countries? Awesome show, by the way. Cheers from London. Well, thank you, Joan. I appreciate that. No, I haven't seen that study, but holy shit, I want to see it because that sounds crazy. I had seen that there was a reduction in life expectancy in the U.S. I think it was specifically among white working males, or just might have been working males in general. There's already a much lower expectation for African Americans and people of color in the U.S., but it was a decrease in life expectancy. And that's wild, man. I think that's the first time in history that happened. $5 from Cunty Cat. What do you recommend for someone who wants to get into political representation, assuming no experience? Well, if you go to the Justice Democrats website, justicedemocrats.com, we have a lot of candidates now, over 30, and they just announced a new slate that I'll probably talk about on the show on Thursday. And all of those people are just because people went to justicedemocrats.com, put in their information, and then there's a process and you get vetted. And if you're a good candidate and you agree on the platform and they think you could win, then you can get in. So I'd say go to Justice Democrats. And if not Justice Democrats, there's other ways to get involved too. You can go, I don't know, get involved with your Green Party in the area, or Our Revolution, or Democratic Socialists, or whatever. Geez, you guys are hitting me with a lot of these. Okay, hold on. $50 from Rat Resistance. Wow. What's your view on Bernie voting for Trump to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem? So I don't know. I don't think he did that. I don't think he voted with him. I think what happened was he had signed a letter that was like in support of it. So I don't think he voted for it, but he was tepidly in favor of it, or he was just in favor of it in a letter. And I totally disagree with him, man. I totally disagree with him. Again, I don't know if he voted for it, so I think there's a little more nuance there than you have in that question, but I disagree with him. I disagree massively with Bernie on BDS as well. I think he's dead wrong on BDS. Bernie's not in favor of BDS. I am in favor of BDS. So there are things I disagree with him on for sure, and that's one of them. On Israel-Palestine, even though he's more to the left than any other U.S. politician or national U.S. politician on the issue of Israel-Palestine, he's still nowhere in my ballpark on that one. $5 from Richard Atkinson. Thanks again, guys, for all this stuff. Will you comment on TYT's mirroring the mainstream media's propagandistic coverage of Russiagate? Sure, I disagree with them. I disagree with them. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of their stuff on Russia, but most of the stuff I have seen of theirs on Russia, I don't agree with. I think they're wrong. I think they have. So if there are people on TYT, whichever host it may be, who agree with me that what Mueller's doing is a good thing if they nail Trump on his corruption, good, then we agree. But if any of them make the claim, I think Trump did treason and is Vladimir Putin's puppet, I think they're totally wrong. Let It Burn, $5. What do I need to do to get you reading more Marx or critical political economy in your spare time? I've read the Communist Manifesto, and I wasn't all that impressed. Sorry to disappoint those who wish I was. Hugh Jass, $10. Kyle, I love you, man. You're one of my heroes. Could you please explain what you mean by Israel being an apartheid regime? Thank you, Hugh. I appreciate that. All the kind words about me being a hero. I assure you I'm not a hero. I'm just a jerk off. But explain Israel being an apartheid regime. I mean, I don't think you need to do much explaining. I think all the evidence is there. I think it's been like that for a while. All the land that they're living on post-1967 is illegal. They're doing it illegally under international law. And they're barely even trying to hide the fact that they're a humanitarian disaster at the moment, and they don't care about human rights, and they don't care about equality, and they don't care about justice, and they have no interest in a peace deal. So I don't think it needs much explaining. I think it's just, you know, you read the news reports on what's happening, and it's been basically mission creep since 1967, taking more and more Palestinian land and just not giving a shit about their rights. I mean, look what just happened. We covered the story of a peaceful Palestinian protester with no legs, a double amputee, who had lost his legs in an Israeli airstrike against him years before. He was holding up a Palestinian flag, and a sniper killed him. You know, look at the last incursion into Gaza in 2014. What happened? Netanyahu, they killed over 80% civilians in the bomb fest in Gaza. They bombed a hospital, they bombed a school, they bombed the only power plant in Gaza. They don't care about the human rights of Palestinians. And their actions couldn't make it more clear. And they play this gross game where they go, no, it's okay because we didn't intend to kill over 80% civilians and to hit a hospital and a school and all that stuff. So therefore it's okay because we mean well, and those evil fucking dirty Arab Muslims don't mean well, and that's a problem, and that's why you must side with us reflexively. Edwin Beltran, $7. Thanks. I appreciate that, Edwin. No question on that one. Is centrist a real thing? You're either for or against. Otherwise, you have no core values. So, David, centrism. So, yeah, centrism is a real thing, but in the context of U.S. politics, centrists are disgusting. And I say that because centrists are usually idiots who say, I'm in between the elected Republicans and the elected Democrats in Washington. And what that means is, like you said, they don't believe anything. They're just vapid idiots who say, why can't we all just get along and make bipartisan deals? I just want to make bipartisan deals. Well, bipartisanship is not inherently good. In fact, most of the time it's really shitty in modern times. The most recent bipartisan deal was Democrats and Republicans agreeing to deregulate Wall Street, which is going to speed up the next crash. That's the most recent example of bipartisanship. And that's one of the worst things they've done recently. So centrists who are centrists in the U.S., and when they're talking about the establishment political spectrum in Washington, they're vapid idiots who think like, they don't think about the issues and they just reflexively go, compromise is good and we should compromise, even though one party's fucking completely insane and the other one's half insane. So, but is centrism a real thing? Yes. And is it something that's actually good in a different context? I would say yes. I've often described myself as an international centrist because, you know, my contention is when you look at all the other modern nations, I'm like, I think their systems are very good. I think the Scandinavian systems are good. I believe in social democracy. I think those systems pretty much have it figured out. So when I say I'm a centrist, I mean I'm right in the center of political opinion in most of the modern world. That's what I mean when I say I'm a centrist, an international centrist. But you know, people who are centrists in the context of the U.S. and when they're referring to like what's happening in Washington, those people are usually across the board totally idiotic. I really hope I don't miss any of these questions, guys, and I apologize if I do. I see a lot of super chats rolling in here. Fuck Palestine and Russia. Atheist gone wild. Justice Democrats suck. You're a lesbian in all caps. TYT equals fake liberals. I don't know what my favorite part of that is. I think probably the way it's written in a very Trumpian way. The way this person wrote their super chat. It's I love the random caps and then the exclamation points. And I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but in recent times, thank you for the $20, Atheist Gone Wild. I don't know if you realize, if you've noticed this, but every time I see something in all caps with an exclamation point now, my mind immediately reads it in a Trump voice. Toasty Breath, $10. Hey Kyle, huge fan, was wondering what you think about net neutrality, and if Congress will say anything, do you think net neutrality can be saved? Also, show us your legs. I will not be showing you my legs because they're very comfy right now with pillows over them and with a blankie. So net neutrality, is it possible that it's going to get saved? Well, Kashama Sawant spoke about this the other day, and The Intercept wrote a good article on this. There is a way to save it where we can have public broadband. You can have different you know, cities and localities get together and even states and say, we're going to make our own public broadband. And people can vote in representatives who say they're going to do that. And then you can have that. And if you think that's pie in the sky, well, it's actually not, because there's 185 places that already have it in the U.S., including Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it gets rave reviews. People love it. So that's the answer. But also there's a bunch of lawsuits now against the FCC and Ajit Pai for what they did, including the Attorney General of my state, New York. He's one of, I think, 18 different attorneys general. I hate that phrase. I want to say attorney generals, but people say attorneys general, which just sounds weird to me. But there's a bunch of them who are now suing the FCC to try to force them to keep the net neutrality rules. So we'll see how those get resolved. Obviously, I hope that the courts rule that we have to keep net neutrality and Ajit Pai can go fuck himself with a cactus. Okay, am I missing? I'm fucking missing these. Oh, God. Spice Arrakis, $10. You should seriously run for president. I'm only speaking for myself, but I'd love to see you tear cunts a new arsehole in the debates. If you burn out, at least you'll have millions of new subs. So you want me to do a Herman Cain and go out there and say, 999, my tax plan. Vote for me, everybody. This isn't a publicity stunt to get myself a TV show or radio show. Yeah, I don't know. I used to say there's no way I'd ever run for office. Now I feel like I just don't know. Maybe there is a chance I'd do it. Come back and talk to me when I'm over 40. And it's like if I want somebody else to do all the shit that I want implemented. Like I want that to get done and me to not have to fucking run. But so I really don't want to be a politician. But at some point I feel like compelled, like I feel like I fucking have to, then I'll suck it up and do it. But I will literally be that guy who, when running, says, I don't want to be doing this, just so everybody knows. Like, I really hate that I have to do this. I'll be the guy who's like, I genuinely don't want this fucking job, so I'm cool if you don't vote for me. But here's what I believe in. And then I tell people everything I believe in. I don't know how to say your name. Ass3 Sinoloco. What are your thoughts on the PKA podcast? What's PKA? Manager told me he reached out to you when I recommended you as a guest, but he said you didn't respond. I don't know what PKA podcast is. PKA. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I'm sorry. I guess I'll look into it if I remember, of course. Rage Against Traditional U.S., $10. If money in politics such a cancer, should the Justice Democrats prioritize their platform to accomplish publicly financed elections, especially since JD have limited funds? So the answer to that is yes. In fact, the number one thing on our JD litmus test is you have to take no corporate PAC money and you have to promise to fight to get money out of politics. So that's a way to try to make all the Justice Democrats principled, even given our current fucked up system, but also have them fight for that system. And actually, we go a step further where we say we support every avenue possible to try to get money out of politics, even ones that I don't think are necessarily the best way to do it. Like, for example, like Represent.us. I love all the people at Represent.us. They're fighting on the right issues, but they're trying to affect money in politics and get money out of politics at like a state and local level. And I just don't think that's the way that's going to stick, because the Supreme Court already ruled money equals speech. Like, you have a right to spend money on politics. So you need to get a constitutional amendment to overturn what the Supreme Court says and make crystal clear that money is not speech and we need publicly financed elections. But my point is, even the people who are fighting money in politics in a way that I disagree with how they're doing it, where I don't think it will be effective, I still support them. I support every attempt to get money out of politics. And, there's parallels here in like third party versus independent versus taking over the Democratic Party. I support everybody in every wave that's trying to get the policies that I agree with implemented. Everybody who's fighting for social democratic policies and people to the left of social democratic policies. I agree with all of them. There are ways that I think will work better. I think Justice Democrats will work better because taking over the party, it's easier to do than trying to build a new party from scratch and get ballot access and unrig the system in order to make the party viable, yada, yada, yada. But I support you either way if you're fighting for the right things. Okay. Almost Helpless, $5, asked, do you think Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, other right-wing commentators will remain popular with conservative millennials in the long run? That's a good question. I don't know. I hope not, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I honestly, on the one hand, I have a lot more hope for the younger generation because the polls show that the younger generation is already overwhelmingly more liberal. But then on the other hand, it kind of shocked me in the first place and kind of hit me out of the blue, like, oh shit, Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder, they're popular, like they have followings. So I would have never predicted that they would have had followings in the first place. So the fact that they do have followings kind of shows that maybe I'm wrong in thinking, they'll fizzle out at some point. But I don't know. There's reason to be hopeful. I mean, Glenn Beck fizzled out big time. Nobody fucking listens to that guy anymore. The Blaze is about to go under in 8 seconds. I mean, that thing's bankrupt. That thing's dead man walking. And Rush Limbaugh, he was popular in the 90s. Now he's the most irrelevant person on the planet. So there's hope that these guys fizzle out. I mean, listen, if you don't believe in anything, and I'm not sure those guys do, then how can you fucking keep it up that long? At some point, you're just going to be exposed to be so vapid. So I don't know. I don't know if they'll fizzle out. I hope they fizzle out. But I guess we'll see. Jadian asks, why isn't there any talk of Trump giving his personal phone number to world leaders? Isn't that similar to Hillary's email scandal? See, to me, so the Hillary thing, it wasn't that she was using a private email or even a private email server. That was the thing that was totally outrageous to me. although that's not cool when you're Secretary of State and you have apparently worse security than even like Gmail would have. She had on her private email server. To me, it was that, you know, what those emails potentially showed, which is all the fuckery with the Clinton Foundation and how corrupt she is with the Clinton Foundation and all the deals that they're doing with foreign governments. And then, of course, she's going to do favors for those foreign governments, like all the weapons deals that were approved for the vicious Gulf countries because they were giving money to Bill Clinton and so on and so forth. So really, to me, it's not the principle of the email, although that's stupid also that she has shitty security in her own server. It's more of what the emails reveal than anything else. In terms of Trump giving out his phone number, I'm sure Trump's an idiot who's doing stuff like that, and he's got terrible security. I mean, I remember when he was a candidate, he was tweeting from an unsecured phone, and a bunch of hackers were like, hey, dude, fucking fix that, or else people are going to hack it. So I'm sure he's not taking the precautions he needs to take. There's no doubt about that. $50 from Alan Cool. Wow, thanks, Alan. Kyle, you're just absolutely tremendous, believe me. I know some very, very amazing and quite frankly powerful people. And you are by far the most tremendous, believe me. Alan, tremendous. Believe me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Brett Fairchild, $5. Hey, Kyle, what percentage of Justice Dems would have to win in 2018 for you to consider it a successful election? Let me tell you something, Brett. That's a good question. But I want to win every race. I don't know what I would consider successful or not successful. I honestly haven't thought that much through it as to how many would have to win for me to be happy. But I want to win every race. I do. And listen, I've always had this theory of if you just give people the fucking opportunity, you give them the option. Put populist left on the fucking ballot. And I think people will pick it. Now, there are more roadblocks than I anticipated coming into this thing. There's no doubt about that. But I want to win every fucking election. I do. I want to win every single one. The biggest roadblock in our way has got to be the indifference of the media, though. Because if you don't watch Secular Talk, TYT, the Jimmy Dore Show, if you're kind of outside of the populist left bubble, then it's hard for you to stumble across the information on these Justice Democrats because national news doesn't cover them. In fact, they make a point of not covering them. Local news doesn't cover them. They make a point of not covering them. So it's all word of mouth, literally knocking on doors and watching online. So they're trying their best to just ignore us and they're totally indifferent to us, and that's hard to overcome because you have to get the word out in order to win. So I hope you guys are sharing Justice Democrats, information about them with everybody because it's super important. And if you can, volunteer your time to help these people any way you can, and also donate to them because they take no corporate PAC money, so they're at a huge disadvantage all the time. They're at a huge disadvantage all the time because our opponents are well-funded. Corporate Democrats are well-funded, so they get to run more ads. They get their name out there more as a result of this stuff. So I want to win every single race. I know it's going to be hard, harder than I originally anticipated, but I really, really, really want to win every race. And I think we have a lot of great candidates. Richard Atkinson, I did that right. Will Justice Dem candidates pledge to run as independents if they lose their primaries? No, they will not do that. But you have to ask each one in particular to see what they'd say. What's your Jorge Garcia Trujillo, $10. What's your interpretation of the necessary and popular elastic clause, and does it effectively nullify the 10th Amendment, states' rights, when the federal government sees fit? So 10th Amendment is states' rights. And I'm not sure about your question. What does it mean? What's your interpretation of the necessary and proper elastic clause? So you're saying basically the 10 amendments being interpreted by the federal government? Like, I'm not sure what you mean by the elastic clause. Does it effectively nullify the 10th Amendment? So in other words, does the federal government have the ability to override the states? Is that your question? Is it a good thing that the federal government can override the states? I think that's what you're asking, but I'm not sure. I think it's a good thing. I think the supremacy clause is a good thing, that the federal law overrides state law. I think that you need to fight your hardest to get the federal laws to be the ones that make sense. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes, for example, like Colorado has legal weed, but the federal government does not. Weed is illegal on a federal level. So on that front, it feels fucked up that the feds can override the states. But in principle, I agree with the federal government being able to override the state government. I hope I answered your question, but I'm not sure. Let me read it one more time. What's your interpretation of the necessary and proper elastic clause? And does it effectively nullify the 10th Amendment? I think the supremacy clause of the Constitution, it doesn't nullify the 10th Amendment. It allows a more expansive view of federal power than having each state be almost its own country, if that answers your question. I think I did, but maybe I'm wrong. Official Spaceman 1190, $10. Kyle, have you ever heard about the Billy Meyer UFO contacts? This guy has been releasing accurate information of all kinds, including predictions for decades, UFOs, metal samples, and more. No, I haven't, but I saw a tweet from CNN today that was kind of creepy, where there was just a release. Maybe this is the guy you're talking about, I don't know. There was just a release of a video where apparently, like, the Pentagon saw unidentified flying objects, but they have, like, video of it. But you know what's fucked up? The video is always fucking grainy. Like, they never have a high quality, like, oh, there it is. There's the fucking UFO. It's 4K. It's always fucking grainy. It's just fucking annoying and weird. Like, why can't you give me a high quality one? So, but I don't know. They were saying it's an unidentified flying object and they can't fucking explain it. But then again, like, isn't it more likely that it's just, I don't know, some other government that's doing a test run with some new technology that we haven't come across yet or something? Like, isn't that the more reasonable explanation? Because what's going to happen if aliens travel here, they're just going to what, come and peek and then just leave real quick? Like, that just seems unlikely. Yeah, I don't know. And I'd be scared if there really are aliens that have visited. I would be scared because, you know, it's a point that many UFO movies have made before, like The Martian. Do they make this point in the movie The Martian? Where they say, you know how we treat things that are, like, we view as less than us? Whether it's ants or fucking pigs or cows or whatever, like, we fucking eat them and step on them. So if there's some alien force that's more intelligent than us and they visit us, it's, ooh, is that time to panic? I think that is. But so I don't know what's going on, but I did see that video on CNN earlier, the tweet they sent out, and that was kind of creepy. I have no explanation for it. I don't know what the fuck it is. P. Zangane, $10. As Iranian American, it is getting really scary in U.S., and as well as the prospects of war back there. What should we do? If they try, I mean, listen, we should already be out in the streets over this fucking tax plan. We should be protesting every goddamn day. I think it's time for a general strike where people say, no, we're not going to work until you do, and we have a list of demands. But yeah, I mean, that I'm in favor of mass protests and a general strike for a lot of the shit that's going on right now. And God forbid, oh my God, if they try to start a war with Iran, holy fuck, everybody in the country should march on Washington and make those politicians fear for their safety. Don't actually hurt them, but make them fear for their fucking safety. They're going to start another goddamn war? We have 7 wars going on right now. 2 full-scale wars with boots on the ground and everything, ground invasions. 7 wars total when you include drone strikes in some countries and traditional bombings in other countries. And you're going to add another war. And a war with Iran would be such a disaster. It's not like Iraq. It's not like Iraq. But obviously the U.S. is just doing the bidding of Israel and Saudi Arabia on foreign policy. And they don't like Iran. They view it as a hostile regime, and they fearmonger about the Shia crescent and all that stuff, which is total nonsense. North Korea is not an offensive threat against us. Iran is not an offensive threat against us. If there comes a situation where we go to war with these countries, it is 100% on us. They're not going to attack us, we would be the aggressors, 100%. We've been ramping up the rhetoric across the board. The Nikki Haley press conference the other day scared the shit out of me, where she's saying, look, Iranian bombs, what are we going to do? We have to attack, you see? These are from Iran. So the same as fucking Colin Powell holding up the uranium. That's what that was. Succular Talk, $10. I'm a Shia Iranian. I watch you very often. Please, please, please do live videos as often as you can. It will be a good revenue stream for you, and we love it so much. Papa bless my cutie patootie. I don't get the last part, but thank you, Succular Talk. Yeah, I like these things. These things are fun, and now that I know how to live stream, yeah, maybe I will do them a little more often. We'll see. XJaws, $10. Hey, Kyle, fellow YouTuber and huge fan. PKA is a podcast run by some big gaming YouTubers that gets 150K views per episode. Wow, it's very good. They're close friends of mine. DM me on Twitter if you want an introduction. PKA, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not, against going on other people's things. By the way, I recently went on, I don't know if he mentioned this yet, so I don't know if I'm allowed to mention it, but I did I did a show with the Humanist Report. Mike from the Humanist Report did his new podcast, and I think that should be released, I think he said Friday, but I'm not sure. But okay, PKA, I'll keep that in mind. San Kang, $10. Hey, Kyle Kulinski. Cook. I still don't fully understand how you're rational on decriminalizing drugs. Like, how does criminalizing drugs lead to more overdoses? By the way, I think your show is tremendous, believe me. That's actually a good question, so let me explain that. So when you criminalize drugs, here's why there are typically more overdoses. When you criminalize it, that means it goes underground to the black market. When it goes underground to the black market, it is made by unscrupulous criminals who oftentimes cut it with dangerous stuff. So when that happens, more people overdose because the drugs are tainted, toxic, poison. For example, Philip Seymour Hoffman, he had his heroin dose, but it turns out it was cut with fentanyl, so he died. That's because it's illegal. Like, let's say you had pills, the opiate pills that were legal over the counter. Many people who get their high from heroin would just take painkillers all day. And yes, there would still be painkiller overdoses, but I think when you look at the total number of overdoses, if drugs were legal, taxed, and regulated versus the total number of overdoses with the drug war that we have right now, I guarantee you there would be more overdoses with the drug war. And I guarantee you more people die in the drug war because it's a literal war. There's a hot war going on the border, and in Mexico, they have fucking mega cartels that have beheaded officers and fucking hung their head up and to show people and scare them. So that's usually the way it works. Like, if you make drugs illegal and you don't give people a legal opportunity to have a certain kind of high, they'll go to the black market, they'll get the worst version of that drug, the more toxic and dangerous version of that drug because it's unregulated, and then they take it and die. So that's the explanation for that. Mariah, I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name, Mariah. I'm sorry. I'll call you Mariah Ali. How's that? $10. Big fan of your show. Oh, 10 pounds. 10 euros? Pounds? Pounds, I think, but I'm not sure. Big fan of your show, Kyle. Would you ever consider going on Joe Rogan? Yes, I've spoken about this many times. I'd love to go on his show, but I don't know if he wants me on his show or if he even really knows who I am. You're on everyone's radar now after taking down Snowflake Cernovich so publicly and masterfully. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And yes, I enjoyed taking down Snowflake Cernovich because he really is a fucking snowflake. He's everything he claims to despise. I'm big on free speech and liberty and people getting over it when there's jokes. If you're offended by jokes, go fuck yourself. We don't care. Facts over feelings. And then the second he has the opportunity to get somebody on the left, he's like, oh, yeah, no, totally. Fucking, we got to fire him because he said something that's politically incorrect. But yes, I'd love to go on Rogan's show. I don't know if he'd have me on. I've spoken about that before. I won't get into it again, but thank you very much. But guys, thanks so much. I'm looking at these super chats. It's overwhelming. You guys are going to, you guys are making me rich here. Jesus. Which, by the way, I should mention this. So I got an awesome secular talk sign that's gonna go in the studio. I won't ruin too much about it yet, but you will see it. It will be on camera. Awesome secular talk sign that just got here, and it fucking broke. The glass on it broke. It's this really expensive sign, and it arrived broke, and I was really pissed off about that and in a bad mood. But you guys are making me feel a lot better. John Richards, 20 bucks. What do you think of the rise of this culture where celebrities like Reagan, Schwarzenegger, Ventura, and Trump become powerful politicians? I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Now, to be fair, not all of them are the same. There are certain, famous people who became politicians, or athletes or whatever who became politicians. Some of them are good. Some of them are good. But as a general trend, I don't like that, because it's a dangerous direction to go, because then it appears like you're not really making decisions about who should run the fucking country based on their ideas and their policies. It appears like it's just simply a popularity contest, and that's not healthy. Like The Rock keeps talking about, oh, I want to run, or maybe I'm going to run. And it's like, dude, look, we all like you. Like, you're entertaining and shit, and your movies are good. I liked you when you were the wrestler, The Rock, but like, can you just fucking stay in your lane, man? Like, you're a fucking actor. You've been making fucking movies. What on earth makes you think you're qualified or you should be president? Now, I get it. Trump is the one that put, well, if he could do it, I could do it. Yes, you're right. You could do it. You could. But you shouldn't. You shouldn't. I want people who really, really, really care about policy and have really studied this stuff and who will fight for the people. That's what I want. I don't want people who are all about self-aggrandizement and all about pumping up their own ego. And I don't want the celebrity kind of person. But again, Trump is the celebrity who got elected. Reagan's another good example. Like you said, he was a movie star. Schwarzenegger, I guess, another example. He was a liberal Republican in California. Ventura, he was governor. Yeah, I don't like that trend. I mean, again, each person is different, and maybe there's an instance where I think somebody's so good on the policy that I could overlook their celebrity and vote for them. But as a general trend, I don't like that trend. Let's see. John, what do you think of the rise of, oh, I already answered that one. Brian Kinlon, $25. Hey, Kyle, big fan of the show, man. Keep doing what you do. And we'd love to see some Justice Democrats win in the Rust Belt. Yes, 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 yes. I'd love that too, man. I'd love that too. There's a certain kind of candidate who can win in Democratic strongholds, in the Rust Belt, and in, a lot of Republican places. If you are populist on economics, you can win almost anywhere. I truly believe that. If I was running the Democratic Party, I would force a 50-state strategy, 100%. Eric Best, $50. Wow, thanks, Eric. Do you think that Trump will rack up more deportations by the end of 2020 than Obama did during his time in office? No, I don't think at the end of the first year, no. Obama broke the deportation record, which is stunning. And by the way, I used to cite that as like another fact of, oh, this proves Obama's way more right-wing than everybody thinks he is. And that is true. He is way more right-wing than everybody thought he was. But it's also a little misleading, that fact, because I looked more into it, and 90% of the people he deported were criminals. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm actually fine with deporting criminals. I'm totally fine with that. So I wouldn't have deported the 10% who weren't criminals, of course. And by the way, that's actually, I don't know, because maybe some of those criminals were nonviolent drug offenders. I wouldn't deport those people. But any violent criminal, yeah, I'd deport. But I don't think Trump will beat it in his first year. I think maybe in 4 years he will. Okay. Brett Fairchild, hey Kyle, I go to Berklee College of Music with the hopes of becoming a full-time musician, but the industry is capitalism on steroids. Is there any regulation that could make it less unfair? No, I don't know. I don't know much about the economics of the field of music. I do know that what is it, music or TV that is typically more unscrupulous in their assholes, that they treat you like shit? It might be music, because I think there's more unionization for TV. Maybe that's the answer, Brett, if you were to do some sort of union thing. I mean, unions, that's the tried and true way of protecting workers. But of course, management tries to prevent it as much as possible. But wherever possible, wherever you can, be part of a union. That's my advice, and I hope that helps. Michael McAllister, $10. Would you consider interviewing Marxian economist Richard Wolff? He's great. Look, I've seen a bunch of stuff with Richard Wolff. He says, done with neoliberal centrism, I'd rather argue the merits of social democratic versus Marxism, much more fruitful. I agree that that's, that spectrum would make a lot more sense. Yeah, I've gone on other people's things recently, but I haven't been doing interviews myself recently. But if I were to fire those bad boys up again, I'd definitely bring on Richard Wolff. I've seen his stuff, and I really like his stuff. I wouldn't agree with him. I guess he self-describes as a Marxist. I'm not a Marxist, so I wouldn't agree with him on that. But in terms of what I've seen him say in interviews, I think he's a brilliant guy, and I think he makes a lot of great points. Robin Meagner, love you, Kyle. My friends and I watch you, and we argue about shit we disagree with you on in class all the time. Anyways, what are your thoughts on Anthony Fontano, and would you do? Yes, I would. Anthony and I have spoken a few times, and he's invited me, and I told him I'd be happy to do a podcast with him. Am I missing some? You're doing great work, Kyle. Ramon, thanks, appreciate that. $20. Eric, oh, you already answered that one. Adam, $5. Hi, Kyle. In the UK, we have a weekly parliamentary session. I love that, where MPs can ask the Prime Minister questions. Should a similar thing be done in the US? Fuck yes. Fuck yes, it should. I love that. I've seen that. I've watched a few of those before. I think it's great. In fact, I prefer a parliamentary system to what we have in the US. I would love it if we abolished the Senate in the US. I think that'd be a great idea. It would be more democratic. It might hurt like at a time like right now because there's way more Republican in the House than it is in the Senate. But on principle, I think it's better to not have the Senate because that's usually what stops most, radical left change from occurring. Like if we had a Democratic stronghold in the House and the Democrats get control, we could get a lot of things passed that you and I want. We could get Medicare for all passed if we had a giant majority in the House. We actually could get that done. We already moved. It was like 50 Democratic Congress people were for Medicare for all. We made it like 120 or 150 something because of what you guys did, signing the petition, calling them, what we did with Justice Democrats and National Nurses United, and a bunch of us got together and we tried to fight for it. We could actually get Medicare for all if we didn't have the fucking Senate blocking us, where all the legislation goes to die. So I would take a lot of stuff from how the UK does it, and I do love Question Time. I think it's fucking awesome. Multi-Talented asks, thanks for the show. You're doing great. If they fire Mueller, how likely is impeachment? Even if they fire Mueller, I think you need the majority of the House of Representatives, which is overwhelmingly Republican, right, to do impeachment. And I don't think they're going to do it, even if he fires Mueller. By the way, just so everybody knows, even though I think the main charge in the Russia thing is bullshit, how they try to say, oh, he did treason or he did some sort of a deal where he's Putin's puppet. I think that's bullshit. But if Trump fires Mueller, number one, there's no doubt he's covering something up. And my guess would be there's some sort of financial crimes or corruption that Mueller caught Trump in. So he's firing him because he feels like he's about to get fucking caught on that shit and there's going to be some sort of consequences. So if he fires Mueller, yes, he's covering something up, number one. And number two, we should fucking go nuts and we should impeach him and everybody should be out there in the streets on principle because you can't fucking fire the person who's investigating you. That's crazy. That's like, the cops find out that I was involved in some sort of elaborate scheme. They start investigating me, and then I call the police department. I go, you guys are fired. You're not allowed to look into me anymore. They'd be like, haha, that's ridiculous. Obviously, you have no authority, nor should you. We're going to keep investigating you. But we're having a conversation about whether Trump can fire The special investigator who's looking into him? No, that's fucking nuts. We cannot have that. We cannot have that. We cannot have that. Okay, let's see what else. Como Freak. $5. Hey, Kyle, do you think the DNC is going to grab House and Senate? The DNC, if you mean the Democrats, do you think the Democrats are going to win the House and Senate? It's possible. We're trying, man. Listen, it's not, people like to tar us with what we're doing with Justice Democrats. They like to pretend like somehow we're helping the right. But the irony is the exact opposite is true. The corporate Democrats are helping the right. The establishment Democrats are helping the right. Because look at what happened with Hillary. There's your corporate Democrat up against a monster on the right, and the monster on the right won. The Democrats lost 1,000 seats under Barack Obama because the party went the direction of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the corporatists. So when that's the direction of the party, we have the proof. You lost over 1,000 seats. So now it's time for the left to take over. And as we try to take over, because all the lessons show we should take over, they go, no, we can't do that because then the Republicans will win. They already won. They're already in control right now because of you. But if Justice Democrats take over and the left keeps winning, then it's very possible that we take back the House and the Senate, and we do it soon. There's something else I wanted to say about that, but I forgot. Oh, well, happens. George Hayes, Kyle, on the topic of PMQ time, have you seen Dennis Skinner, the Labor MP, in those sessions and other times? No, I haven't. Thanks for the show from the UK. I haven't. But maybe I'll take a look. Dennis Skinner, I guess he's awesome. I guess he's cool. I like Corbyn, even though Corbyn's to the left of me. But I like Corbyn. I'd like to see him be prime minister. Scott Dahlstrom, $10. Hey, Kyle, remember when the Democrats held the Senate and everything required 60 votes under a permanent threat of filibuster? What the fuck ever happened to that? Why aren't Dems doing the same thing? It's a goddamn good point, Scott. That's a fucking good point. He's referring to how when the Democrats had like 57 seats, 58 seats or something like that in the Senate, the Republicans said, no, we filibuster everything. We filibuster everything, so now you need 60 votes in order to get it through. But now you have the Republicans have 51 seats, and somehow they get things through with 51, right? Because they use budget reconciliation, which requires only 51 votes to get it through, which then begs the question, why the fuck didn't you use budget reconciliation when you had control, Democrats? It feels like a giant ruse, because it is. Like the whole Obamacare debate. The Democrats didn't fight for single payer. For like a day and a half, they were like, yeah, we should do Medicare for all. Immediate cave. Then they said, okay, public option. Then they argued for that for like a week, and then they were like, okay, cave on that. Fine, we'll do your idea, Republicans. We'll do the Heritage Foundation plan. We'll do the Mitt Romney plan. We'll do the Bob Dole plan. We'll do the individual mandate system that keeps the private health insurance companies in control. So they caved all the way to the Republican idea, and they still got 0 Republican votes, which fucking begs the question, why didn't you just do Medicare for all if you were going to get 0 Republican votes? And that's where people go, oh no, but the Blue Dogs, Kyle, they wouldn't have voted for Medicare for all or a public option, so we couldn't have done that. But actually, if you fucking knew how to play politics and twist their arm, they would have voted for it. If I was President Obama, I would have called the Blue Dogs into my office and I would have said, here's the deal. You're going to vote for this bill or your political career is over. Because here's what's going to happen. I'm the president. My approval rating is over 60%. Your approval rating is nowhere near mine. It's way less than mine. So what if I were to go to your state, campaign for a different candidate, and push for that candidate to win, and we will fundraise for that candidate, so I guarantee you will lose your next election. That's what I would have done, but Obama never did that. If somebody said, no, I don't want to vote for the public option, he went, oh, okay, I guess we have to do the Republican idea now. Never fought for it. Pathetic. Will Phillip, $10. Is a trade war between the U.S. and Canada inevitable with Trump? What's your take on the extremely high tariffs, 300%, placed on Bombardier C-Series aircraft? First of all, I didn't know about that tariff. That is pretty high. And is a trade war inevitable? I don't think so, Will, because it's not, with Trump, it's a lose-lose, because it looks like in his renegotiation of NAFTA, he's slipping in provisions of TPP, which means he's letting the corporations get away with whatever they want to get away with. So it looks like he's going to be a standard establishment Republican on trade issues. I mean, there's been an outsourcing of 93,000 jobs in Trump's first year. Obama's was less than that. It was 87,000. So he ran on not outsourcing jobs, and he outsourced more than Obama in his first year. So he seems like he's a standard establishment Republican with stuff like that. But here's the thing. Even if Trump isn't a standard establishment Republican, and he does kind of crack down and does some anti-trade policies, I don't trust him that he'll do it the right way where there won't be a trade war. So, but I don't know. My gut tells me he's more likely to just do standard establishment bullshit and not start a trade war. If anything, the opposite. He'll let corporations get away with whatever the fuck they want to get away with. And of course, we'll be outsourcing as many jobs as possible. And Canada and Mexico, the relationship will remain pretty much the same with them. Austin Wood, $10. Will we ever see your legs? I love your show. It's tremendous, believe me. There is, for those of you who haven't seen it, there are videos of me online where you can see my legs. There were, like 2 years ago, I did a show in New York City with TYT. You can see my legs in that. Type in Kyle Kulinski on TYT or something. It'll come up. It'll be one of the first few videos. There's a video of my golf swing where you can see my legs. So they're there, man. They're there. People probably have a theory that I'm like FDR, where I'm like secretly in a wheelchair. Eric Best, $20. If you could flip a switch and eliminate political lobbying, would you do it? Or do you think there is a way to incorporate public support so we could all have a say in which lobby groups are in contact with Congress? The answer is yes. I would flip that switch to stop all money in politics. I would stop all private money in politics. I would. I'm in favor of clean elections. I'm in favor of public financing of elections. There's a bunch of different ways to do that, but the gist of it is you ban private money, and like one way to do it is everybody gets like $100 or $200. Then you get to determine who you give the money to politically. So the government gives you $100 or $200 in the form of a fucking tax credit or however they do it, and then you get to spend that money however you deem fit in various elections. That makes sense. And then you stop big money donors from controlling the system. No more super PACs, no more of that bullshit. But, as a general rule, yes, I don't like. If I had the choice of only getting rid of money in politics, that's Wall Street money and Koch brother money, but like I keep in the money from Soros and I keep in the money from Tom Steyer and I keep in the money from unions, no, I'd rather ban it all. Ban all the private money from politics and have clean elections by law and make it so that even if the special interests lobbying the politicians are benign, I still don't even want that. I only want the politicians to represent the people. That's it. I only want them to represent the people. And the best way to do that is to have ban all the private money and have publicly financed elections. Ricardo Maya, $20. Hey, Kyle, Brazilian listener here. Personal question. What's your current opinion on Sargon of Akkad? I know you guys used to be friends, but it seems like he's gone off the deep end, spouting tons of right-wing propaganda. Ricardo, I guess you weren't here for early on in the stream, but I mentioned him already, and I kind of agree with you. I think me and him were friends. I did 4 or 5 like different streams with him, but I think over time he shifted right. He shifted right. What I noticed is in all my conversations with him, he would always say like, no, I'm in favor of, universal health care. I'm in favor of a living wage and, I want to end the wars and all that stuff. But yeah, it seems to me like every video he does, everything I've seen of him is just bashing the left. Like he talks nonstop about social justice warriors, and that's like his main focus. And it's just like, okay, so on some of those things, I agree that, yeah, I don't like the people who try to deplatform speakers on college campuses and stuff, and I'm against the snowflakes, but I'm against the snowflakes on the left and the right. At least what I've seen of his work, he's been a pretty big defender of Donald Trump, and I mean, he's the quintessential right-wing snowflake. He fucking sued Bill Maher over a joke. That's pretty snowflake-ish. Trump wanted to ban flag burning. Remember that? That wasn't that long ago. He was tweeting, we should ban flag burning. That's deeply against the First Amendment. He threatened to de-license news agencies. Again, he is a right-wing snowflake. He is the PC police. He's a social injustice warrior. Yeah, I agree. Sargon has shifted to the right, I think, as time has gone by. Or at least that's what he talks about all the time. And so I think him and I and our politics have gone further apart, and we no longer see eye to eye on the overwhelming majority of things. Let's see. Jesus Christ. Guys, let me say I apologize if I can't get to your specific question. I'm trying to get to all these questions, but there's so many, and I feel like I'm missing some, and I apologize if I miss yours. You, me, and that guy, 53, gives 20 bucks. Love the show, man. Keep it up. Quick question. What do you think is the most influential leader in the world now? The Chinese leader, Xi Jinping. I think I'm saying that right? Right? Xi Jinping? Or Xi Jinping? Or Donald Trump? Ian Bremmer and several other political scientists have stated that Trump is number 2. That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like maybe Merkel. I feel like maybe Merkel is the, viewed as like the number 1 world leader at this point. Yeah, maybe Merkel. And then maybe Jinping and Donald Trump are tied for second. Something like that. I mean, as far as what policy affects the world the most, it's definitely U.S. policy. So in that respect, it's definitely Donald Trump. But in terms of like who's the potential and prospective leader going forward, yeah, it's like Merkel or the Chinese leader. Imperator, is social democracy doomed to failure as long as capitalism remains in place? Look how easily New Deal reforms were eroded. Big business always wins as long as profit is the key economic incentive. No, I would say big business always wins as long as you have money in politics. If you don't have money in politics, then they have no lobbying effect. And so the government will represent the people, even in a hybrid system that includes elements of capitalism. And also, there's another way to circumvent that problem, too, the problem of big business affecting politics, other than getting money out of the system. This is what constitutions are for. So, like, the whole idea of a constitution is these things are off the table and not open to democratic opinion overriding it. So you don't have, like, the tyranny of the majority coming to take away your rights because they can't. So the Constitution, our Constitution has a lot of negative rights in it. So it's the right for the government to not fuck with you over certain things. But I'm a fan of negative rights and some positive rights. So I, for example, if I had my way, I would have in the Constitution a right to health care. Now, this is where you lose libertarians. You're like, come on, goods and services, it's a business. You don't have a right to somebody else's labor. That's fucking slavery. And they come up with every bullshit talking point you can imagine. But there are some constitutions in Europe. I think France's constitution has a right to health care. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, people from France. But I'm pretty sure that's the case. I would put a right to health care in there for sure. And so when you do that, you've made it a right. Then the only system you could have is like a Medicare for all system. So you can't, doesn't matter how much fucking big business tries to chip away at that, they can't. That's set in stone. That's why it's in the Constitution. So yeah, there's a few ways to circumvent that. And as a general rule, no. I know a lot of people in my audience are to the left of me on questions like this, but I prefer a hybrid system. I prefer a mixed system. I like having elements of capitalism and elements of socialism. I mean, obviously in the US, we're way too heavily on the capitalist side of the spectrum, and we're corporatist even, which is basically socialism for the rich, socialism for the corporations, while you have rugged individualistic capitalism if you're middle class or poor. But I prefer a mixed economy. Okay, let's see what else we got here. David Ventrone. $10. Kyle, I don't know how familiar you are with the Canadian healthcare system, but we have a publicly funded, privately provided system. Do you envision this or fully socialized medicine in the U.S.? Again, me personally, I prefer publicly funded, privately provided. I prefer that. That's what you have in Canada. That's what they have in France. The UK is an example of publicly funded, publicly provided. I like the publicly funded, privately provided system. But that's just me. honestly, I would be fine with either one. I'm fine with a UK style system, a Canadian style system. At this point, we're so fucked over in the US with our healthcare system, I won't be picky. I will take any form of single payer because the results are in every other single payer country. It just outperforms us by a mile and a half. So I'll take any one. I won't be picky. But if I had my exact way, I'd go Canada style or I'd go France style, publicly funded, privately provided. Ikariza 87, $20. You and Pacman debating Russia bullshit on Drunken Peasants or any other platform. Pretty please. You know, I was thinking about maybe contacting Dave and talking about that at some point because I like David Pacman. Him and I have disagreements on some issues, but I'd say him and I probably agree on maybe 90% of stuff. So we agree on way more stuff than we disagree on, and he's a guy that I definitely respect. So I would like to talk to him about that issue. I think it'd be very fruitful because I want to see exactly what the argument is from somebody who believes that stuff and has a nuanced view, you know? Like, you're not going to get a nuanced view from Rachel Maddow. She's a fucking smear merchant, and she's wrapped up in the hysteria, and it's propaganda. So I think she's a hack at this point. I don't think David's a hack. I think him and I just disagree on this issue, and we should talk it out. And I should also note, even though I largely disagree with TYT on this, I don't think they're being hacks. I think that they genuinely believe the narrative, and, you know, they would try to defend that. But I don't know. I think my take on it is a lot less hyperbolic, let's say, than theirs is. So maybe at some point, David Pacman and I will do that. I think it'd be good for everybody. SoCal, $10. You're the only progressive on YouTube I find tolerable. Wow. Even if you're a little too soft on Islam for my taste. Thank you, SoCal. I appreciate that. I don't think I'm soft on Islam, but I mean, you probably knew I was going to say that. I mean, I don't single it out as like, oh, this is the worst of all the religions, and let's harp away on that. Because the thing that interests me is whether or not it's true. Like, is it accurate or is it not accurate as a religion? And the answer is no. I don't think any of the religions are accurate. There are differences between religions. So, like, if I had to make a list of ones that, you know, I find more reasonable than others, that list does exist. And there are some that are more absurd than others. And yes, if you look at the violent rhetoric, sure, some are worse than others. But when somebody makes that point and they make it over and over, there's a feeling of cheap demagoguery to it. Like the feeling of, oh, Islam, it's the worst. It's worse than all the other religions. Because then you're getting really close to saying, like, Muslims are worse than other people. And yeah, it smells like bigotry because many people who would make that point are bigoted. I think some that would make that point are not bigoted, and they would have a more reasoned approach, and they'd be able to explain that in a way where they'd show that they're not bigoted. But I do find that many people who would make that point, and many people who do harp away on that issue over and over and over and over, they usually have nothing else to talk about either, by the way, which I find weird that some people have become public figures and that's all they talk about. But I don't think it's helpful, and I don't think most of the stuff they'd say is true. You know, I like of all the new atheists, so to speak, I like Richard Dawkins, because Richard Dawkins always struck me as concerned about the same things I'm concerned about. What's true, what's not true. And he kind of focuses on that angle of it. I think when you start getting into the nuances of, and by the way, when you look at the Bible versus the Quran, there's an interesting fact that I read a while ago that the Bible has more violent passages in it. So it's actually, in totality, a more violent book than the Quran is. But the Quran has a higher percentage of their passages being violent because the Quran is a smaller book. So I thought that was an interesting fact. But again, the thing I care about is it true, is it not true? And not really what are the consequences of those beliefs necessarily, just is it true or is it not true? Because that's that's kind of things I argue for and against on the show. It's not like the consequences of those beliefs, but rather, is it right or is it not right? But yeah, nobody can deny. I mean, I don't think anybody would deny that you do have a problem with the rise of jihadism, which is fundamentalist Islam, Salafism, Wahhabism. But oftentimes the same people who would talk about that endlessly and would talk about Islam being evil, they're also the same people who usually totally discount or don't know about the US's role in propping up that ideology. We armed and funded the Mujahideen when they were fighting the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. So, you know, we propped up Osama bin Laden, funded the Mujahideen, which later broke up into Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Our allegiance with Saudi Arabia for oil and for business reasons, our allegiance with Saudi Arabia, really, I don't think people get how much that propped up fundamentalist Islam, propped up Salafism, Wahhabism. You know, that, because the West has made Saudi so rich, they've exported that ideology, the worst version of Islam. They build mosques all over the world preaching a hateful version of Islam, whereas, you know, Sufism is perfectly peaceful, you know, and that was a more dominant strain of Islam before the US and our evil alliance with Saudi Arabia and our propping them up. And then, of course, I mean, look at what they're doing now in Yemen, bombing the shit out of women and children and blockading a country and starving people to death, building radical mosques all over the place. So really, you know, the worst form of Islam would be Wahhabism, Salafism. And unfortunately, that's something that we've played a big role in propping up and helping foster as an ideology. So I wonder what the world would look like if we never had that alliance with Saudi Arabia. I do think you wouldn't have seen nearly as big of a rise of Al-Qaeda and then ISIS and then various jihadist groups. I really don't think you would have seen it. I really think you wouldn't see the numbers we have today. And obviously, if we did the war on terror, you wouldn't see as big of numbers because we created a lot more of those terrorists with the war on terror. But that's really the ideological cancer. That's the worst strain of Islam that should get the most scrutiny and the most focus. Layla Ziani, hey, hi Kyle, I have a few questions. Do you have a girlfriend? Do you watch House of Cards? How many countries have you traveled to? I think you're cute. Love the show. The answer is yes, I have a girlfriend. The answer is no, I don't watch House of Cards. How many countries have I traveled to? There's an embarrassing answer to that. Should I say it? Okay, I'll say it. One other country. It's the one closest to me, Canada. I've been to Puerto Rico, but that's a U.S. territory. So it doesn't even count as leaving the U.S. But I've been to Puerto Rico, I've been to Canada. I do feel kind of embarrassed saying that. But I do, in the somewhat near future, I do plan on going to Europe. So I will be adding to that country list somewhat soon. What's your opinion on Dave Rubin's Ask Me Anything? What about Jordan Peterson's views on postmodernism and neo-Marxism? Would you ever debate him? What about leftist YouTubers like ContraPoints? I don't know much about ContraPoints. My answer about Dave Rubin is similar to my answer about Sargon. I think he's moved more and more right as time has gone by. And yeah, I don't know. In my opinion, he's become kind of silly. He's become a little bit of a joke. Jordan Peterson, I think he's an interesting character. I mean, I guess I agree with him on his anti-social justice warrior stuff, but I also think he's massively overrated. And he's become like, I don't even know how to describe it. He's become almost like a fucking, not a cult leader, that's too strong. But he's become like a fucking key influence on so many young guys. And I don't think that's a good thing. Because there's so many things he's just ridiculous about. Like, he thinks porn is bad and wrong, and he's a Christian, and he has preposterous Christian apologetics, and he argued with Sam Harris for like fucking 2 or 3 hours about the meaning of the word truth. Which was just a ridiculous thing to listen to. I couldn't even wrap my mind around exactly what he was saying, and I think Harris was as baffled as I am about what he was saying there. But again, while I agree with him on some of his anti-social justice warrior stuff, I don't think he's some sort of hero. Like, I think he thinks he's some sort of hero, but he's not. I mean, he got all this fame in the first place because he said, like, I'm not going to call trans people by what they want to be called, like by the pronoun they want to use. Why? Just fucking call them what they want to be called. It's not that big a deal. And I get it because he was actually saying there's like a Canadian human rights code thing that's saying I have to call them by what their preferred pronoun is by threat of law. But like that Canadian code, there's no punishment if you don't do it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, maybe it's weird to have that code say you have to call people what they want you to call them. Like it's weird to have the law get involved in that. But the law has no teeth to it, so like it's not a big deal. But he made it like this big thing, like I am a hero and I refuse to buy into the fucking postmodernists and the neo-Marxist view of stuff. And I do think he has a little bit of a caricatured version of like social justice warriors and the left in general. Like he shits on the left now, but it's like, so you're looking at like college campus kids who are kind of authoritarian and silly and wrapped up in like gender issues, and you're using that as like your definition of what the left is, as opposed to all the people who are out there fighting for a living wage in like Fight for 15, for example, or all the people who are out there who are, you know, against the wars and protesting the wars and shit. Like, why do you insist on like taking the worst example, the silliest example of people on the left? You use that to like define the entire left, and then you spend all your time arguing against that. That's kind of like a straw man. Like you're saying, well, this is the left. The left is the fucking college kids with pink hair who are obsessed about gender and all that shit. And let me spend hours and hours arguing against this. It's like, it's just like fucking, you know, right-wing porn, basically. That's what it is to a lot of people. And they love listening to him and he does a lot of apologetics for religion. Like he tries to rationalize a bunch of stories in the Bible, and it's just weird. He's a little bit of a weird character. Would I debate him? I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of debates. I mean, maybe I'd talk to him at some point about something, but I really don't know. And I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be interested in talking with me anyway, but yeah, he's an interesting character. I think he's overrated. I guess that's the most I could say about him. Shout out for Wolfpack, Minnesota. Sure. Shout out Wolfpack, Minnesota. We're having a meetup. Details can be found on our Facebook page. So there you go, guys. Check out Wolfpack, Minnesota's Facebook page. If you're in Minnesota and you want to get money out of politics, check it out. Check out their Facebook page, Wolfpack, Minnesota. They're having a meetup. IMD Ranged. I like that name. $5. Hello, Kyle. Have you heard of Thunder? Yes, I have heard of Thunderfoot. My understanding was that Thunderfoot was very, very popular at one time. He's like a science-y kind of YouTuber. And I don't know, in recent times, I guess he kind of fell off a little bit in popularity. I mean, it's weird, man. There was an increase. So like the skeptic community or the atheist community on YouTube, they used to be more focused on science and atheism. But then a lot of the people who were in the so-called skeptic community kind of branched off and moved right-wingish, you know? Like it went from being against the social justice warriors, and now a bunch of them do flat-out apologetics for like the alt-right, which is fucking grotesque and preposterously stupid. So I guess Thunderfoot is one of the like really reasonable guys in the skeptic community. And then like, as a lot of them lost their fucking minds, he just kept being a normal person, and he's not as popular as he used to be. But yes, I have heard of him, and I think I've seen some of his videos, and I remember liking them. Do you know the YouTube channel called The Progressive Voice? Yes, I do. I've seen some of his stuff, and we've communicated a little bit on Twitter. So you guys check out The Progressive Voice on YouTube if you haven't. He does a lot of stories where he covers other progressive outlets and talks like, you know, whatever, the beef between fucking Sam Cedar and Jimmy Dore, or you know, if there's somebody takes down fucking Ben Shapiro or something. He does a lot of coverage of other new media people. So it's an interesting concept. So check out the Progressive Voice. $10 from Phil Christie. What do you think of the democratizing the market, or the worker co-op model? Can we be considered democratic if the owners of the means of production are all unelected and unaccountable? Phil, that's a great idea. And this actually gets back to what, or a great question, I should say. And this gets back to Richard Wolff, the economist that was mentioned before. So I've heard him talk about this, and I agree with a lot of stuff that he's talking about. But the only area I disagree with him. So I'm not against democratizing the workplace and having like the worker co-op model in place. In fact, I like that idea. But the only area I disagree with Richard Wolff on, and actually I don't know exactly what he'd say to this if I brought it up to him, is I don't think that should be the standard and that should be the norm and that should be the only way it is. So in other words, if there are some people who want to have their own business and they're, a one-person business or whatever, that should be totally fine and allowed. If some people still want to have the traditional capitalist model of, okay, here's the boss, and then there are the people below, and the people below who do whatever, you show up to work and you clock in and you clock out and you're done. I'm okay. I'm okay with all of them. So I'm okay with an economy that has democracy in the workplace. So in other words, hey, you and 4 of your friends set up a business, and then all 5 of you vote on every decision that your business makes. I'm totally fine with that. In fact, I think that's really cool. But I'm also fine with if some people just want to have a business and some people want to work for somebody. Listen, when I started out, I didn't want to make controlling decisions. I wasn't ready for it with anything. Like, I liked the idea, okay, here's my boss. My boss is going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to go do it. And some people are like that. Some people want to show up, clock in, clock out. They don't want to think of all the nuances and the details and the things that go into running a business and make all these decisions that are seemingly tedious and annoying. So in other words, I'm in favor of all of the above. I'm in favor of people doing whatever they want. If they want to be in a workplace that's democratized, totally for it. But if they want to be somebody who's in a traditional capitalist building and business, and you show up to work and you clock in and you clock out, I'm fine with that too. So I like all of that. I don't know if he would tell me, no, I'm not in favor of some people having a traditional capitalist setting. I want to abolish that and make everything democratic in the workplace by law. That I wouldn't be in favor of. But anyway, I hope that answered. Let's see. Jesus, I'm losing everybody here. Meaning I have so many and I'm overwhelmed. Connor Lonergan, $10. Have you thought about hiring an IT guy for the show? So I have somebody who does editing and uploading for me part-time. That's all I have at the moment. An IT guy, no, I haven't really put much thought into that. Maybe it's something I should do considering how much of an idiot I am. So I'll do that. Elijah Sly, $10. If the minimum wage gets raised $15 an hour, how do we make sure that companies can't retaliate with mass layoffs and large-scale automation? That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to think about that, but I will say this. Australia already has an $18 minimum wage. They're doing fine. So, in other words, most of the fear-mongering tactics I hear about raising the minimum wage, it's just that. It's fear-mongering. And like they say, oh, there's going to be unemployment's going to tick up and this thing's going to happen and that thing's going to happen. And it just doesn't. In the long run, it just doesn't happen. So, and actually what happens is when you give workers who need a raise, guess what? Now you just improve the entire economy because that person needed that raise so that they could pay their fucking bills and they could go shopping and buy this gift for this person for their birthday. And so in other words, you give money to poor people who need money, it immediately gets spent back in the economy, which is good for everybody. So I think most of that is fear-mongering. Australia has an $18 minimum wage. They're doing just fine. So I'd have to think about exactly what we do if there were to be layoffs, but I'm not even sure there would be. Jesus, $200. Oh, 200 rubles, I guess. Hi, Kyle, listener from Moscow, Russia here. Where do you see this Russia narrative going forward? Love the show. Come over here someday. You won't get in trouble for receiving Russian rubles. Where do I see it ending? I don't know. I don't see it ending well, man. I don't. I see a lot of fucking... I see escalation. I see escalation economically. I see more sanctions put on Russia. Russia returning with more sanctions, then perhaps further escalation with the Crimea situation. As a result, I don't see it ending well. We need a radical new path, man. Oh, God damn it. We got to elect Bernie Sanders in 2020. Holy shit, we have to. Because God forbid a corporate Democrat gets elected, they'll be even more hawkish on Russia. Trump has been like tentatively hawkish on Russia. Like they put a new sanctions bill on his desk. He's like, okay, I'll sign it. And then he fucking signs it. With the Democrat, a corporate Democrat might go even further and escalate further. Remember, under Obama, he was actually pretty good on Russia because he was not in favor of sanctions on them, was not in favor of escalating with them. But then now as time has gone by with after the 2016 election, and now they're blaming Russia for Trump, and that's what's led to the further escalation. So I don't see it ending well, but I almost cringe getting into the details of thinking of what could happen. Eric Best, $50. Wow, thanks, Eric. Of all the ridiculous wars we are participating in, does a Cold War with Saudi Arabia seem somewhat more reasonable? They're treating us like shit and laugh all the way to the bank. Will it take their oil supplies to run out before we realize they are evil? You know, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, I'm definitely in favor of unwinding our relationship with them starting yesterday. Like, unwind the relationship. I'm open to a conversation about maybe sanctions on them too. I don't want a hot war because we're already fucking fighting 7 wars, and it's like, what the fuck are we doing? But I definitely want to untangle our relationship. I mean, listen, Jill Stein spoke about this when she was running for president. It's in the Justice Democratic platform that we want a rule that we don't arm human rights violators. And Saudi Arabia, massive human rights violator, we're arming them. You know, Israel, same thing. We need to stop arming people who are doing vicious things around the world and vicious things to their own populations. We can't for a second be taken seriously when we talk about freedom and liberty and democracy and human rights around the world while we arm Saudi Arabia. So we got to unwind that relationship starting yesterday. The Dream Lover 11, $50. Wow, you guys are going all in here. Thanks. Thoughts on Democratic candidates running for governor in Michigan? Yes, I've heard about Abdul El Said, and I've heard great things about him. I hear he's a very big, like Bernie Sanders kind of candidate. So I'll recommend that to everybody. I don't know enough about him at the moment, but do yourself a favor, and if you're in Michigan, or even if you're not in Michigan, read about Abdul El Said, because I've heard great things about him, and I've heard he's a very Bernie Sanders-style candidate. Zach Campbell, what's the hardest stimulant you've tried, and how was your experience with it? Hardest stimulant I've tried? I tried cocaine, like once or twice. And I don't really remember much. I will tell you this. I do remember I did Adderall a bunch in college, and that I really liked. I really liked it. I'm the worst influence on people. If there are people who are younger listening and they're like, hey, drug, should I do them? So Adderall just made me feel very focused, very talkative, very happy. That's how I felt with Adderall. Focused, talkative, happy, felt like you could fucking conquer the world. And many people have said Adderall's almost like legal cocaine. It's like cocaine in a pill. So I enjoyed it. Now I don't enjoy it as much. I like a more relaxing feeling now than like an uppity, zippity kind of feeling. But yeah, I don't know. I think that answers your question, right? That's the Those are the stimulants I've tried. And I will recommend, I'm not against drug use, as most people are, but I will say this, for everybody, and with all different kinds of drugs, the only thing that's a hard rule for me is moderation. So, like, if you are going to try something, number one, make sure you research the fuck out of it first. Number two, make sure you're with people who you know and trust. And then number three, never take more than the dose that you've studied and planned on taking. Even if you don't feel, oh, like a lot of people do this even with pot brownies. They eat it and they're like, shit, I got to have more of this. And then they go and have more. And then they're fucking on Neptune because they had way too much because they didn't realize it takes a long time for it to kick in. So those are my rules. You can experiment, but just be intelligent with it. Be rational. Do your research and then take it from there. Nusantara Rising, $5. I am an Indonesian classical fascist, not racist, but nationalist authoritarian since the end of 1999. National unity gone and ethnic tensions rising, plus Salafi. Not sure exactly what all that means, Nusantara, but thanks for the $5. Appreciate it. Can you go on TYT main show at the desk for like a week? Oh, and have you watched any Rick and Morty yet? I have not watched Rick and Morty. Please check out Spose on Spotify. I have not watched Rick and Morty. I went, so I just mentioned before how I did a live show in New York with Cenk Uygur of TYT. We did that like 2 years ago. At some point, I will go on their main show again, of course. I do not know when that will be, though. Kabuto Yakushi. Hey, Kyle, what's your say on Jordan Chariton's situation? Kabuto, I've actually answered that already. So go check out. Right now, you're watching Secular Talking Smack #2. If you go watch Secular Talking Smack #1, I discuss that. So everything I've said about that is pretty much, you know, in that first one, and I'm not going to touch on it again here. Matthew, $5. Upstate New York Republican state lawmakers repealing SAFE Act. They say the laws are unfair to the rural upstate New York. Thoughts? I don't remember all the details of the SAFE Act, but I know that that's the gun legislation that was put in place after Sandy Hook. I will say this. I do remember at the time reading through it and supporting it. But right now, I don't know if I were to go through it now, if I were to agree with every single provision, but I think I remembered liking the bulk of it. And Commissar, $10. Have you heard all the allegations surrounding Bernie Sanders saying that he killed a woman? No, and I 100% don't believe it. William Yang, would you ever debate Lauren Southern, Paul Joseph Watson, Peter Sweden, Mike Cernovich, other? Okay, have you ever considered trying to debunk their BS on your show every once in a while? So that's you know, I've had similar questions to this before, like, oh, why don't you talk about the newer, younger right wingers as opposed to, like, I'll do, you know, I do segments on fucking Rush Limbaugh or Hannity or some shit. That's a good question. Most of the time I cover what I find when I do my research for the show, and it just so happens that outlets cover those older right wingers more than the younger ones, so I don't see the younger ones' stuff as much. To answer your question, no, I would not debate Cernovich because he's a fucking liar. He's a liar and a smear merchant, and he's totally dishonest, so I would never debate it. He just got caught making up allegations against Chuck Schumer. I hate Chuck Schumer, but he made up sexual assault allegations. He's a genuinely bad person, and he's full of shit. He has no principles whatsoever, and he's a scumbag. So no, I would not. I don't know much about Lauren Southern other than she's a white nationalist, so no, I probably wouldn't debate her. You know, Paul Joseph Watson, he's like an affiliate of InfoWars. Alex Jones is a crazy person. We don't even need to get into it. There's a million pieces of evidence for that, and all of you pretty much know that. But Paul Joseph Watson, I had an interesting exchange with him recently where I went after Snowflake Cernovich for getting Sam Cedar fired over a fucking joke when he claims he's in favor of free speech. And Paul Joseph Watson originally was like on Cernovich's side. But Paul Joseph Watson tweeted something at me, and I was like, Paul, come the fuck on, man. Your whole thing is like free speech. You talk about it all the goddamn time, man. So be principled for once and say, look, I don't agree with Sam Cedar politically, but it's just a joke. Get the fuck over it. And he shouldn't have been fired. And he basically said, like, I don't even know if it's a joke, man. Like, so why, how can you say that? And I was like, what? Even if it wasn't a joke, you should still be in favor of him not getting fired because you're the fucking free speech guy. That's what you say you are. And so then I sent Paul Joseph Watson an article that showed that Cedar was joking. And then to Paul Joseph Watson's credit, he flipped. He tweeted like, no, I don't think Sam Cedar should have gotten fired. And Mike Cernovich is wrong. He basically said that. And then Cernovich started going after Paul Joseph Watson. So in my limited experience with Paul Joseph Watson, I don't despise him. I know me and him disagree on almost everything. I think we agree on Syria because he was against Syria intervention. I'm against Syria intervention. We agree, at least to an extent, on the Russia thing because I don't think that Trump is Putin's puppet. He obviously doesn't think that. But if he's principled in his free speech stance, which it looks like he is because he defended Cedar, then I agree with him on the free speech stuff too. So maybe there's a slim chance I do a dialogue or something with Paul Joseph Watson. But just keep in mind, I really do disagree with him on like 90% of shit. I mean, he is viciously like anti-immigrant to the point where it borders on just flat out fear-mongering and bigotry. So, but anyway, that's my story about those people. Hope I answered your question. Heavenly Arms says, thoughts on proportional representation. Love it. Ranked choice voting is a good reform, but alone still tends towards two parties, while proportional representation allows representation for a wider spectrum of views. So that's a great question, and I will say this for everybody. Go do your own research about all these kinds of reforms, proportional representation, ranked choice voting, and all that stuff, because they're different, but in my opinion, they're all good. So, you just heard one of the arguments here in favor of proportional representation over ranked choice voting. But honestly, I look at this kind of like I look at the single payer debate where I say, listen, I'll take any version of single payer you'll give me because we just need single payer now. It's similar with this. Like, I'll take ranked choice voting. I'll take proportional representation. I'll take anything that makes the system more fair. Justin Lance, ever heard of Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian? It's a great novel and has the most terrifying villain of all time, Judge Holden. Read it. No, never heard of it, but that's Justin Lance who said that. $5 he gave, and it's Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian for everybody or for anybody who's interested in it. I have a theory being a billionaire is immoral. Name one billionaire. This is from Michael McAllister. He sent $5. I have a theory being a billionaire is immoral. Name one billionaire who has not exploited numerous people, slanted public policy, etc. Like patent law, for example. Michael, I did that poll the other day on should we have a 100% tax on everything over $1 billion that an individual has. So, in other words, you max out at a certain point. $1 billion adjusted for inflation as time goes by. Nobody can have more than $1 billion. And it was 40% yes, that should be the law, 100% tax on everything over $1 billion, 39% no, so it just barely lost. Then it was like 21% that said, I'm not sure, I'm 50-50 on it. So I guess, at least in my audience, most people are like, yeah, you shouldn't have more than $1 billion. And yeah, how the fuck can you spend more than $1 billion? If you can spend more than $1 billion, chances are you're a really, really shitty person. You're like super materialistic and greedy, and you're just an immoral sack of shit. But I actually do think there probably are billionaires who are not immoral. Like Tom Steyer, for example, apparently he's a billionaire and he's pretty moral. He's a pretty committed lefty, though I don't know enough about him to be fair. I did a story the other day about athletes and billionaire athletes. Michael Jordan's a billionaire. Tiger Woods is a billionaire. And you go down the list. Like, I'm not sure they're immoral. I mean, they definitely have way too much money and they should be taxed more for sure. But I don't know if they're immoral. I think it's possible to be a billionaire and be moral. But I think the more interesting question is, should we allow any billionaires? Like, should we allow people to have more than $1 billion? And I do think that's a legitimate question, because there's a certain amount of wealth that when a person has it, just by virtue of how much it is, it threatens the very foundation of democracy, because they're so rich that they can just buy the system. You know, that's basically what kleptocracy is, or plutocracy, or oligarchy. And that's definitely where we're at in the US. I mean, the richest 6 people in the world have more wealth than the bottom 50%. So that's like 6 people have more wealth than 3.5 billion people, which is fucking crazy. I mean, that's like, there's no argument for that. That's not a meritocracy. It's not like, hey, those people just worked harder. No, they didn't. That's the product of a rigged system, 100%. Okay. Spice Arrakis, you should seriously run for president. I'm only speaking for myself, but I'd love to see you tear. Oh, I already answered that. Have I gone through all these? Spunky, $5. Dennis, $5. In one of your podcasts, you mentioned that you used to stutter. No, I didn't stutter and become a great speaker you are today. No, Dennis, I didn't stutter. I used to stammer. That's the technical term for it. Don't ask me what the difference is, but I remember them saying, no, it wasn't a stutter, it's a stammer. I think what that means is I was speak like this. I think a stutter is when you get caught on the first part of it, like what are you doing? But for me, I would stammer through the whole thing. I guess that's the difference, but that's what I used to do. I don't know what happened. I do remember one of my friends when I was younger used to, like, I think he probably helped me, even though at the time I thought it was kind of douchey, but he was one of my best friends. I'll give him a shout out. His name is Mike LeBret. When we were kids, we were very close friends, and I would stammer when I talked to him, and he would stop me, and he'd go, stop, think out the full word, and then say it. And then I would do it, and when he told me to do that, I'd actually do it. And I'd be like, whoa, he actually like fixed it. But when I was a kid, I used to do that. And then I don't know, I think I had grown out of it by the time I was like probably 10 or 12. I had grown out of it by then. But yeah, you know, while we're on this topic of like me when I was younger, what was I going to say? Shit, I just lost my thought. I think I've been talking for too long because I just like lost my train of thought mid-sentence. I was talking about stammering, and then I was going to say when I was younger. Oh, when I was younger, I was going to talk about my grades in school. When I was younger, I would, in high school, I got like B's and B pluses, and I basically never did any work. Like, I rarely did homework, or if I did, I totally half-assed it. I would not study for tests at all, and I somehow got B's and B pluses. I don't know how. In middle school, I was a little angel. I was like a little subservient angel who would always listen to the teachers, always be a suck-up. But in high school, I didn't give a fuck about any of my work, somehow got B's and B pluses. And it's weird. I went from being like both extremes, a perfect little angel who sucked up to his teachers in elementary school and middle school, and then come high school, I was super rebellious, but I still managed to get B's and B pluses. Okay. Oh, shit. What have I done? Do you think technology has advanced the degree that a fourth citizens branch of government could exist? Something to serve as a true check and balance, i.e. the power to veto a war decision or strike down a vote. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, we'd have to get into the specifics of how you would craft the laws around that and what exactly the powers are of the citizens branch, if you will. But I don't know if you need a fourth branch of government, or you could just reform the system we have now to make it more representative of the will of the people. But obviously, you need to make it more representative of the will of the people. That's a given. How you do that is really the question. That's from iSurf. Gave $20. Thank you. Amir asks, gives $10 and says, "Hi Kyle, do you think Bernie will be able to stand up to the military-industrial complex?" If he gets elected, I think he will. I think he will. I mean, Bernie, I think he's like one of the only politicians, probably along with Ro Khanna and Tulsi Gabbard, who talk about, like, we spend more on our military than the next, like, 10 countries combined. And most of them are our allies. So, and in fact, he voted against the budget. Remember the military budget that had a giant increase of like $70 to $100 billion more this year? He voted against it, and he was really aggressive in talking about that. So I do think he'd stand up to them. How much? I don't know. I don't know how much Bernie would do to fundamentally change the system in terms of Saudi Arabia and Israel and how much we do their bidding. But of all the politicians in the political landscape, I trust him more than any others to stand up to the military-industrial complex. I don't know how much any one individual can succeed on that front, but I do think he'd at least start to stand up to the military-industrial complex. Abdulaziz asks, "Love from Saudi Arabia. Please don't hate us." Abdulaziz, I don't like your government. I have nothing against the people of Saudi Arabia. In fact, I'm sure there are many wonderful people in Saudi Arabia. But you are the victims of a very oppressive government. And when I argue against Saudi Arabia, I'm arguing against its government more than anything. But thank you very much for the love. I appreciate it. I'm trying to make sure I get all these guys. In fact, you know what? Let me just tell you right now, don't send any more questions, because I'm going to wrap it up soon. But I do want to make sure that I get all of your questions here. So I'm scrolling through. Big Seltzer owns Secular Talk, gives $5 and says, "What do you think about voluntary euthanasia for the severely depressed?" That's a great question. That's a great question. So I've spoken about this a little before. In fact, back in the day, I did my 50-50 episode of Kyle and Corin, where me and Corin spoke about the issues that I feel like I'm permanently torn on. And that was one of them. That was one of them. So I'm in favor of physician-assisted suicide, euthanasia. Definitely in cases of if somebody has a terminal illness and you want to end your life, 100%, you should be able to say, I want to peacefully go. No doubt about it. But then I'm not sure if I'm in favor of or not physician-assisted suicide, like under any scenario. You know what I mean? And what you're asking is severely depressed people. I mean, my fully libertarian side, like on social issues, I'm very libertarian. That side of me says, yeah, who are you to tell anybody what they can or can't do with their own life? If they want to end their life, who the fuck are you to say no? Or who is the government to step in and say no? You should have a process where they can end it peacefully, and it's not, you know, in some fucking garage where you turn the car on or they blow their brains out or some shit. So that part of me says yes. The other part of me says no, we should have rules and regulations along with physician-assisted suicide where you limit it to cases of, you know, terminal illness or something like that. But for severely depressed people, I mean, I get it. If there's some sort of process and they've tried everything, and they can't do it, then yeah, it's hard to say no to that person. But I would have to think about that more. I'm totally split on it. So yes, 100% you should have physician-assisted suicide legal for terminally ill people. And I don't know, I would want to think about it and maybe look at some polls and maybe hear some debates as to whether or not we should expand it further to basically physician-assisted suicide for any reason. I think there are some places that actually have that, right? Where you could do physician-assisted suicide for any reason. I think there's like 1 or 2 countries that have that, if I'm not mistaken. Do you think Ro Khanna in Congress could stand with Gary Johnson and Jill Stein's call for SCOTUS to review the third-party debate? Actually, I'm sure he would. Ro has been so incredible. I mean, so he was, listen, he was the first incumbent to step up and go, I'm a Justice Democrat. And in all my conversations with him, he was the one telling me, like, hey, look, here's why this is awesome. I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to be telling you why Justice Democrats are awesome. But he's telling me, he's like, he always tells me, every time I'm in Washington, I feel like I'm on another planet where everybody around me is totally unaware of what the will of the people is and what they want. And it's really creepy. It's like Rogan is in an episode of The Twilight Zone, and he's the last sane man on Earth. And every issue where I've spoken to him about it, it's been like that. Like, he immediately goes, I agree, that makes sense. Like, there was one of his colleagues proposed a bill to stop giving Israel money that's then used to like illegally detain and torture Palestinian kids. I sent him the article about the bill, and I said, do you support this? He immediately responded, said, yes, thank you for showing me that. I'm signing on to it tomorrow. That's Rokana. That's Rokana. You know, for Medicare for all, free college, ending the wars. He's been just a voice for the people in Congress. So yes, if I bring that up to him, would he stand with Gary Johnson and Jill Stein to review third-party debates? So in other words, have the Supreme Court determine whether or not the threshold for third-party debates is reasonable or not. Yes, I think he would stand on that. Thank you, Andrew, for that question. Spice Arrakis, I already read that one. Do you think technology, yada, yada. Oh, okay. So there we go. I went through all of them. Yeah, I think that's it, right? Yeah, we did all the super chats. Okay. So thanks, everybody. That was fun. I really enjoyed that. Now, I'm actually gonna do one more thing here before I wrap it up. Don't send any more super chats. We'll be done with the super chats, but I do want to talk about one more thing, which is the Ta-Nehisi Coates versus Cornel West article. So Cornel West wrote an article, and it is, hold on. It is titled, Ta-Nehisi Coates is the neoliberal face of the Black freedom struggle. So I recommend you read it. It's in The Guardian by Cornel West. It's called Ta-Nehisi Coates is the neoliberal face of the Black freedom struggle. Now, Ta-Nehisi Coates, he's an interesting character. He's a writer for The Atlantic, and some of his pieces have been, in my mind, eye-opening. I've read them and I go, okay, number one, I think he's a fantastic writer. Like, you know how some people write in a way where it, like, kind of goes right into your brain and, like, you absorb it? I feel like that with him, for sure. And some of his articles I've liked. But then other times I've read his articles and I've gone, I don't know. And in my mind, when you read his stuff, you see it's pretty much solely talks about race. And Cornel West really goes after him in this piece, and he basically says, so Ta-Nehisi Coates is a little bit like fatalistic and nihilistic and pessimistic in his approach. So in other words, he talks about white supremacy, and he talks about the struggle for Black freedom, but he talks about it in a very individualistic way. And that gets under Cornel West's skin. And let me read you this passage because I think this sums up Cornel West's argument. He says, unfortunately, Coates' allegiance to Obama has produced an impoverished understanding of Black history. He reveals this when he writes, quote, Ossie Davis famously eulogized Malcolm X as our living Black manhood and our own Black shining prince. Only one man today could bear those twin honorifics, Barack Obama. This gross misunderstanding of who Malcolm X was, the greatest prophetic voice against the American empire, and who Barack Obama is, the first Black head of the American empire, speaks volumes about Coates' neoliberal view of the world. Coates praises Obama as a deeply moral human being, quote, deeply moral human being, while remaining silent on the 563 drone strikes, the assassination of U.S. citizens with no trial, the 26,171 bombs dropped on 5 Muslim-majority countries in 2016, and the 550 Palestinian children killed with U.S.-supported planes in 51 days, etc. He calls Obama, quote, one of the greatest presidents in American history who for 8 years walked on ice and never fell. Wow. And Cornel West goes on to say, it is clear that his narrow racial tribalism and myopic political neoliberalism has no place for keeping track of Wall Street greed, U.S. imperial crimes, or black elite indifference to poverty. So when I read Cornel West's piece, I thought, yeah, he's making a good point, and I think he nails it. And he's pointing out how Ta-Nehisi Coates is not linking into his discussion or to his worldview class and empire and every other form of domination. So he loves to talk about white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy, but he doesn't really offer any solutions because he's a pessimist, okay? But then he doesn't ever talk about class and empire. So how are you supposed to fight back against some genuine racism in society? Like, for example, the statistics on the death penalty, where white people and black people commit the same crimes. Black people get the death penalty way more often. Same thing with sentencing. Black people and white people commit the same crime. Black people get way more time. So how do you talk about these issues, these very important political issues, without bringing up class, without bringing up empire? So in other words, Cornel West is saying you're divorcing a struggle for freedom from its full context. You're just blaming it on white supremacy, and you're only talking about white supremacy when you need to talk about, you know, class and empire. And that's why Ta-Nehisi Coates sings amazing praise for Obama, because he looks at the drone strikes, or he doesn't, but he just doesn't care. He doesn't care. You know, oh, Barack Obama, he's, you know, he really compared him to Malcolm X. He walked on ice for 8 years and never fell. What? So in other words, all the real scandals of Obama, continuing mass surveillance, increasing mass surveillance, taking 2 wars to 7, you know, poverty, income inequality continued to skyrocket under him. Half the country makes $30,000 a year or less. He didn't fix that. He didn't fix it. Killed an American citizen with a drone strike. No due process. But Ta-Nehisi Coates looks at Obama and he says, he's our black shining prince and our black manhood, just like Malcolm X was. No. No, no, no. Because then what you're saying is, I don't care about the actual policy issues. I don't care about class. I don't care about empire. I don't care about by the way, the thing that would help to fight racism. What helps fight racism? Medicare for all, free college, living wage, New Deal, end the wars. You want to fight injustice? That's the answer. But no, he doesn't talk about those things. He doesn't talk about class. He doesn't talk about empire. He talks about white supremacy, and pretty much only white supremacy. And he's pessimistic. He doesn't offer a view to fix it. And he divorces it from the policy issues that would fix it, from the policy answers that would fix it. And I think reading this article, I went, wow, yeah, Cornel West is 100% right. You can't sing Obama's praises and hold up him as some sort of an ideal when he did all these horrible things. But you're saying, oh, since he overcame a system that is racist in Ta-Nehisi Coates' mind, he became president of the United States of America, a country that had slavery and then Jim Crow and all these things. So he's like this ideal, this guy who rose through this system and became president of it as a black man. He's our black manhood. He's a prince. And it's like, no, you're looking at the situation from an individualistic perspective. So a black man became president. It doesn't mean the situation's better for all black people or other black people. You know, that doesn't mean we fixed the fact that we're an American empire that's doing 7 wars. That doesn't mean we addressed income inequality or the racist drug war. So I agree with Cornel West. I think his piece was brilliant. And, you know, again, I kind of like Ta-Nehisi Coates' writing, but you do sense that all he talks about is the white supremacy angle of this stuff, and he doesn't get into the class or empire at all. And when you read a passage like that, like, oh, Obama walked on ice 8 years, never fell, and he compares him to Malcolm X, it's like, no, that's just wrong. And that's the point Cornel West is making. And he's saying that guys like Ta-Nehisi Coates, actually, they're the neoliberal elite. Like he would argue, Cornel West would argue, Michael Eric Dyson is the same thing. Like a black intellectual who sold himself out for neoliberals. So in other words, they're fine with corporate Democrats. Michael Eric Dyson, corporate Democrats are good enough. Ta-Nehisi Coates, corporate Democrats are good enough. Okay, Obama. Sure, we got Obama. Obama, you know, he's a black president. He did a few decent things. He moved us in the right direction, a few steps on some issues. You know, hey, we covered millions more people with health insurance with Obamacare. It's not single payer, but whatever. We did the Iran deal. Good enough. All this is good enough. So that's what Cornel West is saying. He's saying you can't compare Malcolm X to fucking, you can't compare Obama to Malcolm X. That's disrespectful to Malcolm X. You know, you have to look at these issues from more than just an individualistic perspective. A black man became president. Therefore, he's like, you know, it's so amazing. Well, no, what about all the issues and the policy issues where he did a terrible job and he didn't do the right thing and he wasn't fighting and he wasn't sticking true to what they would call the black freedom struggle? So, yeah, I think Cornel West is right. Cornel West, I think, is brilliant, and he always makes very, very good points. And I agree with him. You can't sing the praises of a guy like Obama and say he walked on ice 8 years and never fell unless you totally don't care about policy and totally don't care about the effects on other black Americans. And I think that's his point, that guys like Ta-Nehisi Coates and Michael Eric Dyson have sold themselves out to corporate Democrats, and they say, we'll defend the corporate Democrats no matter what. Whereas Cornel West says, no, you need to demand more, and we need to always keep fighting and struggling to get a more just system and to fix the system for everybody, especially black people as well, because you can't hold yourself up as some sort of a black intellectual leader and then do propaganda for a black leader whose policies weren't that great for black Americans. So there you have it. Anyway, let me, I'm going to take one more look here. Wait, where's the fucking, oh, here it is, okay. Okay, yeah, so we're all set. Thanks, guys, this was fun. You know, the last Secular Talking Smack, I got a lot of views. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I literally just, you know, went on Twitter. We did a fake live stream, as I call it, the last time. It wasn't a live stream. It was a fake live stream where I, like, asked you guys to ask me questions on Twitter. Then I went on Twitter and answered them there and recorded that for you. But it got a lot of views. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, you guys like this kind of impromptu, just talking off the cuff kind of shit. So, but anyway, this was fun. Maybe we'll do it again soon. And thanks for all the super chats, guys. I really appreciate it. It means a lot knowing that you guys were there to support the show no matter what. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks for all the support and all the super chats. And yeah, I guess we'll talk soon, or I'll definitely see you. You know, a whole bunch of new videos will be uploaded on Thursday. All right, have a good night, everybody. Peace.